think actually the point around 20 mile an hour is a point about listening. That's why I've committed to a review to understand where the public are, to maintain a policy that I think will make a difference, but to look again at how it's been implemented and some of the particular and specific issues that members of the public have.
And Vaughan Gething joins us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Adam.
Or should I say Bore da?
Indeed, Bore da, Adam. Da iawn.
How is your Welsh? Because I think you'd be the first leader of Wales not to be a natural Welsh speaker. Is that right?
Dwi'n dysgu Cymraeg. I'm learning Welsh, and I think that's an important message, actually. If we're going to have a long-term future for the language, if we're going to reach 1 million Welsh speakers, then we need more people like me who are learning the language and looking to use it in bits of everyday life, and indeed in my job role from time to time as well. So I'm making progress, and I'm quite content with the fact that I am able to use bits of Welsh. And also my son's going to school, obviously, and so I'll be able to do bits of Welsh as he is learning at a faster rate than I am.
Why does the Welsh language matter? As you say, the majority of people in Wales are not necessarily first language Welsh speakers. Why is there a need to build it up?
Well, it's one of the things that makes Wales Wales. The language and the culture belong to all of us, whether you're a fluent Welsh speaker, whether you're a learner, or whether you're an English speaker. And actually, internationally, when I go abroad to sell opportunity to invest in Wales and for Wales to have opportunity to export abroad, the Welsh language and culture is part of what makes Wales interesting and distinct within the UK. It should be a source of pride for all of us, and I'm determined to make sure that happens. And I generally think having a First Minister who is a learner, and I hope we'll get visibly better in terms of the language, is part of that. And it's the future of the language economically and culturally that I think is really, really important for its survival.
Because I suppose you could say it adds complexity and cost to the daily lives of a lot of people.
If you go to other parts of Europe, go to the Basque Country, for example, the Basque Country has been successful economically. And again, lots of people talk about the different culture and the language alongside Castilian Spanish being what makes it really interesting. It's exactly the same message here. And if you look at what's happened with the story of Wrexham, that hasn't just been about Hollywood people turning up and having fun with a football club. It's been interesting because they've got so immersed in the language and the culture of the town and the supporters as well. So I generally think the Welsh language is a real plus for Wales, and I'm determined to continue to see a healthy and positive future for the language and the culture. And as I say, something to be celebrated by all of us in both of our national languages.
You were a loyal minister under Mark Drakeford, though you did run against him for the leadership back in 2018. What would you do differently as First Minister?
Well, I served as Mark's deputy in the health department, and as you pointed out, I served as his health minister and now in the economy department. Every leadership contest is an opportunity to renew where we are. And of course, people are different and there are slightly different choices they'll make. I think I'm able to present to the people of Wales the experience I have, having been tested in an extraordinary way during the COVID pandemic. And I think I've got the values that people will recognise as well. I was a trade union employment lawyer before I sought election
but would you
to the Senate. But more than that, I think I'll be able to have an optimistic vision for the future.
Do you think you'd represent change? I mean, for example, a lot of people moaning about this 20 mile an hour speed limit in Wales.
Well, I think there are always going to be moments of change and renewal, but we have a proud platform to build on. You know, people in Wales have carried on voting for Welsh Labour leadership because we've never taken their support for granted and because we've always been prepared to listen. And I think actually the point around 20 mile an hour is a point about listening. That's why I've committed to a review to understand where the public are, to maintain a policy that I think will make a difference, but to look again at how it's been implemented and some of the particular and specific issues that members of the public have. And from my own point of view, Adam, I'm the father to a child in primary school. I want him to be able to ride his bike and to be safe on the street. But I also recognise there probably is a need to look at some of the areas of Wales where I think local people have a view about the safety that they want to see happen, to see speeds lower in residential areas so it doesn't undermine the policy. But of course, a review will have the opportunity to look at those niggles, I think, that do exist in the wider public. And that's what I'm committed to. It shows, I think, that it's important not just to lead, but to listen as a government. And I definitely think that is one of the things that I can offer.
What's your answer to what Conservatives say whenever the running of the NHS is raised. They say, well, look at Wales. Labour have been running it for many years. And according to most of the statistical analysis, it's much worse there.
Well, I'm really proud of the fact that we have a positively public health service here in Wales. We haven't gone down a marketised route as they have in England, and we're much more honest about what's happening in the service here in Wales. If you look at the future, we need to focus again on innovation and efficiency, but we also need more resources. That's why I set that out earlier on this week. And to have a focus that will help us to address waiting lists, that will help us to deal with chronic conditions, and also help us to improve outcomes for mental health. So I think when you look at people here in Wales, they of course want to see improvement in our National Health Service, but they also want to know that the NHS is going to be there for them and isn't going to be turned over to the market. And I understand this very well on a personal level, Adam, because I've had the experience of being seriously unwell. The NHS was there for me when I needed it, and I will always be there for the NHS as the leader of Welsh Labour and First Minister.
But the difficulty may be, however well intentioned you are towards the NHS, that it hasn't worked as well as the English run, the Conservative run NHS for decades now.
Actually, if you look at a number of different measures, our health and social care have a better partnership and better outcomes. You look at social care, the way we've protected it, and that's crucial to make sure that the NHS doesn't fall over. And in a bigger focus on outcomes as well as waiting times, I think we have already proven that we can improve the service without privatising it. And I think with a different view about the resources that the NHS needs, not just here in Wales, but across the UK, I'm confident that we can have something that is still true to Bevan's principles and delivers outcomes that the public want to see.
So what's your explanation for why on statistical measures the performance has been worse in Wales?
So actually at the moment on A&E, performance is better in Wales than in England. Part of our challenge though is that our population in Wales is older and less healthy. That means you have a bigger challenge in terms of healthcare need. So you're not always comparing like with like. If you compare Wales to a region of England that is more similar, then actually the outcomes are not are not so different. And at the same time, when you look at the gap between health and social care have a much greater and better relationship here in Wales than in England. We haven't hollowed out social care in the same way. All of those budget challenges are there for the future. And it makes it so desperately important to get rid of this terrible Tory government and elect a UK Labour government with a different partnership and a different approach to investing in not just public services, but in an economy that is flatlining.
What about tax raising in Wales? There are talks about really having a big shake-up of council tax in the UK. Of course, in Scotland, they have the power to put up income tax, which they're using. I mean, does Wales need to raise more of its own resources through taxation?
The challenge about taxation is, and you'll know this, Adam, there isn't just a cost of living crisis, but working people are paying the highest rates of tax since the Second World War. They're paying more tax to have less investment in the economy, less investment in public services. If you really think the answer is to raise taxes even further now, I think you're asking the wrong question. What we need desperately is a change at a UK level. Now, when we look at how we use taxes in Wales, we're always entitled to make different choices. That's what devolution is all about. We're consulting on council tax, but we need to see whether actually we can go ahead with that, whether the time is right to do it. And it comes back to the fact that politics is a practical business. You need to set out what you would like to do, ideally sometimes. We've also got to set out in really practical terms what you're going to do. And I do not think that now is the time to raise taxes on working people here in Wales. We actually need to get rid of the Tories. That is the biggest barrier to a fair settlement and to investing in our future.
What about raising taxes on wealthier people?
Well, I think that when you look at the number of people who pay higher rates of tax here in Wales, they're actually very small. And so if we wanted to raise taxes on the top rates of income tax in Wales, it wouldn't generate a great deal of money. That's part of the reason we need to grow the economy. It's part of the reason that I'll be setting out what I want to do on a better economy here in Wales and taking advantage of net zero opportunities.
You became very familiar.
So we actually need more people in the middle bands and we need more people in the upper bands. And then I think we'll start to see a difference in the amount of tax we raise here in Wales.
You became very familiar to a UK-wide audience during the pandemic. Looking back on that now, do you think mistakes were made? Was it a mistake to close schools to the extent they were closed?
Well, we were desperate to keep schools open. It was our big priority. If you ask people here in Wales, the overwhelming view is still that Wales did a good job. It's part of the reason why I'm standing for this election, part of the reason why I say that I'm ready to lead and have the experience to do so. Because I had to make those extraordinarily difficult choices in real time with Mark, whilst we had all of those difficult consequences staring us in the face, and a very different approach in England. You know, whilst there were parties in Downing Street, we were working as hard as possible. We didn't have a VIP lane in Wales. That was my choice about how we did that. We didn't waste billions on a privatised test and trace system. We had a positively public approach that delivered better results and it cost less, which allowed us to then invest in businesses at the time to help them and to help sole traders to survive. So I actually think my experience of having a significant leadership role in the pandemic is one of the real positives that I offer. And I can tell you, Adam, I've been knocking doors in Ynys in Pembrokeshire and Carmarthen during the last couple of days, and no one on a doorstep has said that they thought that I'd done a terrible job during the pandemic. Actually, the experience has been a very different one.
Finally, a new popular hero has emerged following the television dramatisation of the Horizon sub-postmaster scandal. What do you think now should be done about Alan Bates, the Welshman who led the fight back against the post office, and also about the post office and the inquiry?
Well, my understanding is that Alan has turned down and doesn't want an honour. What I think he wants is a measure of justice, and not just the recognition that comes with the television series, but actually an understanding clearly of what happened and why, and what will then take place for those people that made the choices to cover up what was going on. It's very hard, I think, for people to recognise an honour system that rewards people who appear to be successful, but are doing that in a way that all of us think is obnoxious. And I think that's the lesson of the post office scandal. You shouldn't carry on rewarding people and let them have honours they plainly don't deserve. More than that, though, I want to see the public inquiry come to a conclusion, to lay bare what's happened, and to have as meaningful a compensation scheme as possible, because lots of people who are caught up in this scandal spend a huge amount of their own resources that has not yet been covered in the compensation offered. And for some people, the money will never make up for what happened. There were 4 suicides as a result of this scandal. People lost respect in their communities and felt ashamed of something that was not their fault. Putting that right, I think, is very difficult. But recognising that without Alan Bates, we probably wouldn't be here describing what had happened, describing and recognising a real injustice that had taken place. I think we need to find a way to recognise that in a way that I think meets not just his wishes, but the wishes of all those who've been caught up in the scandal. And I spent a lifetime outside politics in standing up for people, and I recognise the courage that it can take and the determination it can take to reach this point.
Just as a matter of interest, when did you become aware of what was going on?
A few years ago, when there was an expose about the fact that the forensic accountants had been sacked just before they were about to publish their report. It's extraordinary that a scandal of this nature has been covered up for so long. And I'm aware of not just the issues that Alan Bates has raised when there's been coverage about that. It's taken a long time to get from that to where we are now and to actually having a public inquiry. And that's one of the things that I think most people find upsetting, that an institution that is trusted has done this and knowingly done this to people they have trusted in their communities who have been stigmatized through no fault of their own.